Drive to Survivor's 7th season is a hot mess. And F1 drivers are not having it. Drive to Survivor, the Netflix drama series that occasionally features some actual F1 racing. Every year, we buckle up for the latest season, knowing full well that we're about to witness an overproduced, heavily dramatized soap opera masquerading as a documentary. But hey, that's part of the fun, right? Well, maybe not so much this time. Season 7 has officially crossed into what the actual F***CK territory, and even the drivers, who usually just roll their eyes and move on, are starting to call out the ridiculous creative liberties being taken. Take the so-called rivalry between Vapen and Norris. Oh, you didn't know they were mortal enemies? Yeah, neither did they. Apparently, after Norris finally clinched his maiden F1 victory in Miami, Drive to Survivor decided to re-edit history with all the precision of a blindfolded monkey. The show twisted the entire storyline, making it seem like some deep-seated feud had been boiling between the two drivers. The problem? That's just not what happened. And then there's the absolute circus they made out of Mercedes' Spa debacle. If you watched the actual race, you'd know what went down. But according to Drive to Survivor, the narrative took a bizarre detour into some parallel universe where everything unfolded very differently. It's almost like they assume F1 fans have the memory of a goldfish and won't notice the creative rewriting of reality. But here's the million-dollar question. Is this shameless dramatization putting the future of Drive to Survivor at risk? If it keeps straying further from the truth, will it start losing credibility, even with the casual viewers who just tune in for the drama? And, more importantly, what do the drivers think about this mess? The 2024 season. High stakes, high drama, and Netflix butchering reality. There's no denying that the 2024 F1 season was one of the most thrilling we've had in years. Since 2021, we hadn't seen this level of competition, tension, and nail-biting unpredictability. It was a year of redemption for some, heartbreak for others, and a roller coaster of emotions for fans. And yet, instead of capturing that magic, Netflix decided to do whatever the hell they did. Take Lando Norris, finally breaking his curse and grabbing his first-ever Grand Prix win. This should have been a wholesome, celebratory moment, right? Well, Drive to Survivor saw it differently. In their world, Norris' victory became the climax of some fabricated blood feud. And to make things even worse, when they cut to Jenson Button narrating what was supposedly happening in Miami, they used footage from the Dutch Grand Prix instead. Yes, seriously. Because apparently, every race looks the same to them? Vapen himself couldn't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. In reality, after the Miami GP, he was ecstatic, calling it the best night of his life. But Drive to Survivor? Oh no, they made it seem like he was brooding in the shadows, devastated by Norris' win, probably plotting revenge like a villain in a Fast and Furious movie. When asked about this bizarre misrepresentation, Vapen basically shrugged and said, "I was literally having the time of my life that night. What are they even talking about?" And as if that weren't enough, the show took things even further. At one point, Vapen was directly asked in an interview whether he considered himself the biggest enemy of Drive to Survivor. His response? Silence. The kind of silence that says I could absolutely destroy you right now, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut to avoid a PR disaster. You could practically hear his inner monologue screaming, "If I speak, I am in big trouble." So, when does the documentary actually document reality? Look, we get it. This is entertainment. It's a show, not a history textbook. A little dramatic editing? Fine. A bit of exaggeration? Sure. But there's a big difference between spicing things up and outright rewriting history. At some point, it stops being a documentary and turns into a badly written fanfic. F1 fans are not stupid. They watch the races. They see what actually happens. So when Drive to Survivor starts pulling wild stunts like this, all it does is piss off the people who care about the sport. Social media has already roasted the show for this nonsense, with fans basically saying, do they think we don't have eyes? Do they think we don't remember what actually happened? And let's not forget the context of the Miami GP. This wasn't just Norris' big moment, it also marked the beginning of Red Bull's decline and the shocking announcement of Adrian Newey's departure. That was the real story. That was the drama that mattered. But no, instead of focusing on one of the most significant turning points of the season, Drive to Survivor decided to spend their time inventing rivalries and pretending Miami was actually Zandvoort. At the end of the day, We'll probably all still tune in next season, if only to see what other nonsense they come up with. But if Netflix keeps pushing these fake narratives, they might eventually kill the magic of the show. After all, F1 fans love drama, but only when it's real. Drive to Survivor has officially lost the plot, and F1 fans are losing their minds. Alright, let's get one thing straight. If you take Drive to Survivor as gospel, then you probably also believe Miami is in New York and that Russell is the reigning king of Belgium. Yeah, welcome to the latest season of Netflix's favorite F1 fever dream, where facts take a backseat to drama, and reality is bent more than a Red Bull front wing in a tight chicane. One of the biggest, fattest blunders of Season 7? The way they absolutely butchered the Belgian Grand Prix. Now, let's be real. George Russell did put on a hell of a show at Spa. The guy fought like a madman on dead tires, defending his position like his seat depended on it. But, and this is a big but, his car did not comply with the weight regulations. Meaning, disqualified. Gone. Hasta la vista, baby. Yet, somehow, Drive to Survivor decided to just skip that part. Netflix's alternative universe, where Russell wins Spa and Miami, is in New York. The fans who actually watched the race, you know, the people this show is supposedly catering to, were left scratching their heads. Because in Drive to Survivor's version of events, Russell won Spa. Yep. They straight up rewrote history like some F1-themed fanfiction where Mercedes is on top, Ferrari never strategizes itself into oblivion, and Red Bull doesn't implode mid-season. And to add even more WTF energy to this episode, Netflix threw in a dramatic scene where Toto Wolff, our favorite Austrian mastermind, hand-delivers Russell a baseball bat. Yes, a bat. Why? Who the hell knows? Maybe as a metaphorical passing of the torch, or maybe just because Drive to Survivor thought the episode needed an extra sprinkle of mobster energy. The whole scene played out as if Wolff had finally seen enough, and crowned Russell as the new leader of Mercedes from 2025 onward. A decision apparently solidified by his victory at Spa. Except, oh yeah, he didn't win Spa. He was disqualified. And just to make this entire situation even dumber, this episode also included Kimi Antonelli's promotion to Mercedes. Which, sure, that's a cool and important moment. But the whole thing got overshadowed by the fact that Drive to Survivor was still pretending that Russell had a Grand Prix trophy in his suitcase instead of a DSQ next to his name. Fans are not buying this BS. Look, we all know that Drive to Survivor loves a bit of creative storytelling. A little added drama? Fine. A few over-the-top rivalries? Whatever. But completely fabricating race results? That's where F1 fans draw the line. Fans took to social media to rip Netflix a new one, pointing out that Drive to Survivor was treating them like clueless idiots who never watched a single race. Some were legitimately pissed, while others just laughed at the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. And let's not forget, other drivers actually finished the race with a one-stop strategy. Alonso, for example, pulled off something that Russell couldn't. So why was Drive to Survivor so hell-bent on pushing this narrative? If this show is supposed to grow the F1 fanbase, then maybe, just maybe, it should not be outright lying about what happened. Fans don't mind a bit of flair, but if you start selling straight-up bullshit, it's hard to take anything seriously. The real story, the Russell versus Vapen showdown that Netflix ignored. And if all of that wasn't enough of a mess, Drive to Survivor also conveniently left out one of the juiciest behind-the-scenes moments of the season. Russell's 14-minute rant about Vapen. Yeah, you read that right. George Russell went on record with a full-on TED Talk about why he was absolutely 100% in the right, and why Vapen, surprise, surprise, was not. This wasn't some casual offhand comment. This was a full-scale verbal takedown, with Netflix cameras rolling, F1's official media crew present, and probably a few confused mechanics wondering why George suddenly turned into a YouTube drama commentator. Yet somehow, Drive to Survivor didn't include this in their final cut. They had all the footage, all the spicy drama, and they just ignored it? Instead of this golden piece of F1 beef, we got Russell swinging a baseball bat and a completely fake version of the Belgian Grand Prix. What an absolute waste. Final thoughts. Just give us the real drama, Netflix. At this point, Drive to Survivor isn't just bending the truth. It's snapping it in half like a broken front wing. And for what? Some watered-down, alternate reality version of F1 that only makes sense if you haven't actually watched the races? If the goal of the show is to bring in new fans, fine. Make it entertaining. But don't insult the intelligence of the actual F1 audience by rewriting history just because you feel like it. Russell didn't win Spa. Miami is not in New York. And George's 14-minute Vapen takedown should have been included. Do better. Netflix. Drive to Survivor keeps dropping the ball. And F1 fans are pissed. If there was one rivalry that had F1 fans foaming at the mouth in 2024, it was the absolutely scorching clash between Vapen and Russell. This wasn't just some petty spat over radio messages. No, this was a full-blown battle of egos that got so heated, it dragged in their team principles and threatened to shake up the paddock dynamic completely. The kind of drama that makes headlines, floods social media, and fuels endless debates in every F1 group chat. And yet, Netflix took one look at this golden storyline and said, "Nah, let's just pretend it never happened." Seriously? They had hours of footage, multiple on-record statements, and probably some juicy behind-the-scenes moments that could have made for an absolute banger of an episode. But instead of serving up the real deal, Drive to Survivor decided to skip it altogether. No episode. No mention. Not even a single goddamn scene. Maybe they're playing the long game, waiting to capitalize on the drama when 2025 rolls around. But even if that's the case, not covering it at all? That speaks volumes about just how much this show is missing the mark when it comes to giving real F1 fans what they actually want. Russell versus Vapen. A feud too real for Netflix? Let's break this down. We had Vapen straight up declaring that he had lost all respect for Russell, and Russell firing back saying he wouldn't be bullied like the rest of the grid. This was prime F1 drama. Two top-tier drivers going at it, unfiltered. You'd think that, at the very least, Drive to Survivor would dedicate a few minutes to it. No. Nothing. Crickets. Instead, we got a carefully sanitized, family-friendly version of events that completely erased one of the most intense driver feuds in recent history. If you're wondering why F1 fans keep calling bullshit on this show, well, this is Exhibit A, the Adrian Newey bombshell that Netflix just ignored. But wait, it gets worse. Because not only did they ghost the Russell versus Vapen drama, but they also completely glossed over one of the biggest shakeups in the sport's modern era. Adrian Newey leaving Red Bull for Aston Martin. This wasn't just a small move. This was the first domino to fall in what is now shaping up to be a major power shift in F1. We're talking about one of the most legendary designers in the history of the sport, a guy who has defined entire eras of dominance, walking away from the team he helped turn into a superpower after nearly 2 decades. And Netflix thought, man, not that interesting. Seriously, are they allergic to covering actual F1 history in the making? Because here's the thing, Newey's departure could change everything. By 2026, Aston Martin could become an absolute beast. And guess what? If Vapen ever decides to ditch Red Bull, you can bet your ass Newey will be the first one trying to lure him to Silverstone. So why wasn't this covered? Because it didn't fit into whatever manufactured storyline Drive to Survivor was trying to push? Because it didn't have enough fake, over-the-top tension? Whatever the reason, it's a huge miss. Ollie Bearman's debut. Another wasted opportunity. And then there's Ollie Bearman's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix debut. This was one of the most exciting moments of the season. A rookie thrown into the deep end in a last-minute call-up, and not just surviving but actually showing he could be a long-term solution for an F1 team. How much of that did we get to see in Drive to Survivor? Basically nothing. And what makes it even more frustrating is that Bearman wasn't just some one-and-done driver. He ended up racing for Haas as a substitute and scoring points, making him the first rookie in F1 history to drive for 2 different teams in a single season and score points in both. That's not just some minor trivia fact. That's actual history being made. Yet, Netflix seemed to think this wasn't worth including. Why? Because it didn't involve some dramatic, completely fake rivalry? Because they didn't have enough exaggerated radio messages to make it exciting? This just proves, once again, that the people making Drive to Survivor don't really understand what real F1 fans care about. F1 fans are over it. And the boycott calls are back. After all this nonsense, it's no wonder that F1 fans are once again calling for a boycott. And honestly, they have every reason to. Because Drive to Survivor isn't just twisting reality anymore. It's flat out ignoring some of the most important moments of the season. And for what? More fake narratives? More over-dramatized nonsense? Yes, this show helped bring in new fans. Yes, it played a major role in F1's expansion into new markets. But at what cost? If Drive to Survivor keeps screwing up its storytelling like this, it's going to hurt the sport's credibility in the long run. This might even be why Vapen originally wanted nothing to do with the show. He saw the bullshit coming from a mile away. Sure, he eventually changed his mind, but after watching this season, he's probably wondering if that was a mistake. Final thoughts? What do you think? So, here's the big question. What are your thoughts on the latest season of Drive to Survivor? Do you think Netflix is completely botching the F1 experience? Or do you still find it entertaining despite the nonsense? And more importantly, how do you feel about these massive moments being completely left out of the show? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more about the possibility of Vapen jumping ship to Mercedes, make sure to click the video on your screen right now.